Hello and welcome to the 160th second photography podcast. In this episode today, I'm going to talk about a lens that I've gone and bought again. So I originally had this lens, but I sold it and now I've bought it again. So the lens in question is the Canon 10-18mm IS 4.5-5.6 STM lens. Now this is an ultra wide angle zoom lens specifically for APS-C because it is an EF-S lens. So it won't fit on your full frame for Canon, but it will only fit on the APS-C bodies. Now, more and more since getting the SL2 or the Canon 200D, I've been more and more in favour of an APS-C body. Let's wind back to when I first got a Canon DSLR. I got the 550D, which is a brilliant camera. I still have it because I don't really want to sell it because it's still a good functioning camera. Really, I got that to do video, and because I had that and lenses, I then got into photography, and I've done both. Now I've moved away from using the 550D for video and photography. I've moved away from using it for photography because after a few years, I bought a full frame Canon 5D Classic used for about £200 or £300, and I was using that for a long time. So I was using that for my photography and I was using the 550D for my videography work. And then I upgraded to the Canon SL2, the 200D. And I upgraded to that camera because I saw it was cheap and I bought it from Toby Deals, and I think I paid a ridiculous amount of money. I think I paid less than £300 for it. It was incredibly cheap, but it gave me, over the 550D, it gave me superior autofocus, and it gave me that real-time autofocus because it had Canon's dual pixel AF. It gave me better frame rates. So on the 550D, I had 24, 25 and 30. Well, now I could do 24, 25, 30, 50 and 60. I could also use a lighter codec if I wanted to save space. Predominantly, that was the reason I got it. It was more for my video work. It still has the 9 autofocus points when you use the OVF, the optical viewfinder. It does have better autofocus for photography if we're using the back screen. It doesn't hunt so much. It is better, but generally, unless I'm photographing my children, I generally use the viewfinder. If I'm photographing my children, I do actually use the rear screen because it will lock onto faces and children move really fast. If there's multiple faces, you can switch between them really quickly, which you can't really do with traditional autofocus through a DSLR viewfinder. That's been my journey. The 5D Classic doesn't do video. I know the 5D Mark II was heralded and is a great video camera. I'd still probably say it's good today. That doesn't do video. So that's my journey in Canon DSLRs. So this lens that I'm going to talk about today, this 10-18 EF-S, it has image stabilization. It's an STM motor, which means it's silent compared to USM. USM you can hear creaking about. You can hear USM motors creak about, but the STM ones, you can't hear them creak about, and they're quicker, so you get much better focusing. So it's not that much money. It's light, it's ultra wide, it's got STM, it's got image stabilization. Well, why on earth would I sell it? Well, the problem is the aperture. So it starts at f4.5. So there is another lens that's very similar, which is USM, which is the Canon 10-22 EF-S lens. Now that starts at 3.5. Both these lenses start at 10mm, but that more expensive and older, I should say, Canon lens, the 10-22, starts at 3.5 aperture. This one starts at 4.5. Now, the other lens is a variable between 3.5 and 4.5, I think. And this one I'm talking about, the 10-18, is variable between 4.5 and 5.6. So already it's a stop darker, essentially. If you want to set your aperture where you move through the zoom range and your aperture doesn't change, you have to go to 5.6 on this lens. Now, back when I was using the 550D, starting at 4.5 and going to 5.6 wasn't good because it meant I would have to significantly up my ISO, and I couldn't really shoot at ISOs over 800. Anything over 800 was too noisy. At the time, doing video work, I didn't have brilliant lights. So what's changed between then and now? Well, now I have very powerful video lights that I use, and I have the SL2, and the ISO is so much better on the SL2. In fact, I regularly record video at 3200 ISO, and I would have no problem shooting photography at high ISOs with this camera. The ISO performance, or the high ISO performance, is so much better. When I started my videography with the 550D, I would use very wide apertures to let a lot of light in, so I didn't need to go to the high ISO. I could fix it in post, but you can never truly fix things in post. You can just mitigate the issue in post. You can make it less bad, but you never get rid of it in post, particularly with audio, by the way. So always better to record it right or get it right in camera. So I could use a denoise plugin, and it got rid of some of the noise, but the consequence was it made the image soft, it made it blurry, it increased the computational computing and therefore extra processing time. And at this point in my videography outputs, videos were taking 2 hours to produce using older PCs at the time. Sony Vegas. It was taking 2 or 3 hours to produce a video, and then I might spot I want to change something. So I was never happy to go and use high ISO, so consequently I was using very wide apertures, 24 frames per second, so I could get the slowest of shutter speeds, etc. Now 24 frames per second is a good recording frame rate anyway, and I still use 24 if I can. If I'm mixing with other cameras, I'll generally stick to 25 because that's the common one between all my cameras. Anyway, getting the SL2, I don't need to go to wide apertures to get a decent fill of light. I've got my external lights, I can go to high ISOs. But what I was finding when I was doing product reviews, I was finding the best way to do it was to put my camera on f8. So I generally do my product reviews with another EF-S lens. So I put my 24mm EF-S STM lens on, pancake lens, very light setup with the SL2, and I would generally put that on f8 and I put it on ISO 100 around there, 25 or 24 frames per second, put the suitable shutter speed in and record. And I found f8 better. It gave me better focusing, gave me sharp images. Things weren't blurry. I wasn't having to move the product about and be more specific or be more accurate in where I put it to get good focus, even with the Canon dual pixel autofocus. And I was finding for some things, I couldn't get a wide enough shot. So for some things, not all of the product or the box or whatever I was doing was in the frame. I was thinking, I wish I didn't sell that 10-18 lens because this would be perfect. The limitation I had with the lens was resolved with the changing camera, and now I actually want to shoot at f8, and at f8 it will be fine. So going to a more modern camera meant I didn't have that limitation, and I was shooting at f8 anyway. So what did it matter? So I ummed and ahed. The lens is still on sale, even though it's now quite an old lens. It's still on sale, and I've been slowly getting rid of photography kit I don't need. Some of it I've been selling on eBay, but where I'm not getting a good price on eBay, I'm trading it in. So I traded in some photography kit, realised after I traded it in, I've got credit, I haven't got money for this. So I had credit sitting there, and I'd sold some other stuff off on eBay, so I had the funds to go get it without actually going out of pocket myself. So I bought a used one from Rex Photographic. It arrived in a couple of days, and I've used it and I've been really, really happy with it. So it has good image stabilization. It's very wide. If you go to 10mm, that's an equivalent of 16 on a full frame. You notice it's wide. People at the edge of the frame get a bit distorted. They go slanty. Put it to 18, and that is, I don't know, we call that maybe approximately 28, which is your standard sort of wide angle look, and it's fine. And put it in f5.6 and there's no change in aperture when you zoom between. It handles well with my camera. I can shoot indoors, shoot my children, and have high ISOs, and I'm not worried about things. I can walk around, and it's a good lens. Pair it with my SL2 and the 24mm prime, and I've got a really good setup. I've got really good wide, I've got really good prime, I've got shallow depth of field at 2.8 if I need it. All those things are light. I can put the pancake lens in my pocket. This lens I suspect is under 300 grams. It's incredibly light. It is plasticky, but it seems tough plastic. Doesn't have a metal mount, it has a plastic mount, and it does do macro at 22 centimeters. So it is a useful lens. You can go in, you can have a wide field of view and do macro, which has some really good possibilities. I tend to use it more for videography, but I have it there for photography. And one of my favorite landscape images that I took with this lens back when I had the 550D. And again, I used a slow shutter speeds. So the slow aperture problem wasn't a problem because I wanted to get C moving anyway. I wanted to create a mist effect. And it's this picture of a ramp going down where you put a boat into the water, and this old beaten up wooden fence going down into the water. And I shot it on a tripod slow enough that the sea just misted. The sea that moved in and out just appears like mist. It's great. It's one of my favourite landscape shots. I've got this lens for mainly videography, but I can always use it for photography. I can always take it out with me, and it's a very light package. So all in all, I am pleased with the lens, but the irony that I originally sold it isn't lost on me, but I'm still happy to buy it back again. And actually, I think I might have made money by selling it before and buying it back at less than I sold it for. But that's another matter. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.